The first sign of trouble was when the proximity alarms started blaring. Jack's rider, one of the Human Federation's top pilots, knew in his gut what it meant before the panicked voice came over comms. Zorak raiders. They're swarming us from all sides. All fighters, scramble and protect the convoy. Jax was already sprinting for his ship, the sleek E-294 Raptor, pride of the Federation fleet. Around him, the carrier's hangar bay exploded into controlled chaos as pilots and crew rushed to battle stations. He leaped into the cockpit and slapped the ignition, the fusion engines roaring to life. Jax slammed the throttle forward, and the Raptor screamed out of the hangar, the G-forces pressing him back into his seat. Outside was a maelstrom of whirling ships, energy blasts, and the bright blooms of explosions against the starry black. The Zorak attack craft were vicious-looking things, all jagged edges and cruel barbs, like flying switchblades. Jax gritted his teeth. "Ryder, you've got a bogey on your 6. His wingman Kara's voice sounded tense over the comm. Jax wrenched the stick hard to port, pulling the Raptor into a gut-churning corkscrew. The Zorak raider overshot him, leaving a perfect opening. Jax squeezed the trigger, and a lance of superheated plasma speared the enemy ship, turning it into an expanding cloud of vapor and debris. "Got him," Jax said tersely. "Form up on me. We need to draw their fire away from the transports." He and Kara tore through the heart of the battle, lasers and pulse cannons flashing. They moved like they shared one mind, covering each other flawlessly. Still, the Zorak kept coming. A flash of light caught Jax's eye, and he turned to see a Zorak cruiser, trailing flames and venting atmosphere, plunging past on a collision course with one of the human transports. "Oh no you don't," Jax growled. Kicking his afterburners to max, he angled the Raptor to intercept. At the last second he cut thrust and flipped the ship on its tail, hitting the cruiser with a tractor beam and wrenching it off course. The cruiser missed the transport by meters, careening off into the void. But as it tumbled away, Jax saw something launch from its flank, an escape pod. Kara's voice crackled over the comm. "Jax, what are you doing? We need you back here." Jax didn't answer, his jaw set with a sudden determination. He swung the Raptor around and boosted after the pod, snatching it with the tractor beam. He knew the risk, knew it was probably a trap. But he couldn't just leave them, even if they were the enemy. "Hang tight. I'm bringing a pod aboard," he transmitted tersely. "Could be prisoners or intel. Get a security team to Hangar 3. The battle still raged as he maneuvered back to the carrier, the pod in tow. As soon as he touched down, the security team swarmed the pod, weapons drawn. With a hiss of equalizing pressure, the pod's hatch cracked open. Jax pushed through the ring of guards, needing to see for himself. Curled inside was a lone figure, female, by the shape. But the lavender skin, the jutting cranial ridges, the luminous golden eyes that fluttered open to lock onto his. She was Zorak. And she was the most beautiful thing Jax had ever seen. In that moment, as those molten eyes met his, something passed between them. A spark, an understanding. Jax knew right then that this was no ordinary Zorak, and that both their lives had just changed forever. Her lips moved, forming unfamiliar words. Then her eyes rolled back, and she slumped, unconscious. Jax lunged forward and caught her before she could fall, cradling her limp form to his chest. "Get a medic now," he barked at the security team. "And tell command I'm on my way. I think our fortunes in this war may have just taken a turn." Jax paced outside the infirmary, his mind awhirl. The battle was over, the Zorak raiders driven off, but not without heavy losses to the convoy. And now this mysterious Zorak woman, who'd looked at him with such desperate intensity. The door hissed open, and the ship's doctor emerged, her face grave. "She's stable, but extremely weak. Looks like she's been through hell." Jax nodded, his jaw tight. "Can I see her?" The doctor hesitated, then stepped aside. "Just be careful. We don't know anything about her yet." Jax entered the dimly lit room, The Zorak woman lying still on the bed, her lavender skin almost glowing in the half-light. Her eyes opened as he approached, tracking him warily. "Who are you?" Jax asked softly. "Why were you in that pod?" She licked her lips, seeming to gather her strength. "I am Kira," she said haltingly, her voice melodic despite the roughness. "I am a scientist, and I am a traitor to my people." Jax's eyebrows shot up. "A Zorak traitor. Go on," he urged. Kira struggled to sit up, wincing in pain. Jax found himself moving to help her, earning a surprised look. "My people, the Zorak, they are ruled by a tyrant, the Overlord. He wishes to exterminate your kind, to rule the galaxy unopposed. But there are those of us who oppose him, who believe in peace. I stole plans, schematics of his doomsday weapon. I was trying to escape, to bring them to your people as a warning, an offering of alliance. But I was discovered. That attack, it was to stop me." Jax's mind raced. A Zorak doomsday weapon, a chance for peace. It seemed too incredible to believe. But looking into Kira's eyes, he saw only sincerity and a deep aching sorrow. "Why should I trust you?" he asked hoarsely. Kira met his gaze unflinchingly. "Because I am asking for your help. I offer all I have, all I know, to stop this war before it consumes us all. I offer my very life, if needed. Please, I beg of you, take me to your leaders. Let me complete my mission. It is the only hope for both our peoples." Jax stared at her for a long moment, torn. Every bit of his training screamed not to trust her. But his instincts, that indefinable sense that had saved his skin countless times in battle, whispered that she was telling the truth. And if she was, then the stakes were beyond measure. The fate of entire species hanging in the balance. Slowly, Jax reached out a hand. Kira looked at it, then at him, her eyes wide. Tentatively, she placed her own hand in his. "Okay," Jax said softly, his voice rough with emotion. "Let's go stop a war." And with that simple gesture, that fragile clasp of hands, an unlikely alliance was forged. Human and Zorak, enemies by birth, united in a desperate quest for survival and peace. But the path ahead would be fraught with danger and sacrifice, and it would test the limits of trust, loyalty, and love. "They're gaining on us." Kira's shout was nearly lost in the scream of overstressed engines and the bone-rattling impacts of enemy fire. She clutched the arms of the co-pilot's seat, her knuckles pale blue. Jax wrenched the control yoke, sending the Raptor into a dizzying spiral. A heartbeat later, a barrage of plasma bolts seared through the space they'd just occupied. "Damn it, they're persistent," Jax growled. Behind them, visible through the crackling energy of the rear shields, the angular bulk of a Zorak warship loomed. It had appeared out of warped space mere minutes after Jax and Kira had made their desperate escape from the human fleet. Jax had known their flight would be risky. Command had been skeptical of Kira's story, hesitant to trust a Zorak defector. But Jax had convinced them that the potential payoff, the plans for the Overlord's doomsday weapon, was worth the gamble. They'd agreed to let Jax ferry Kira to a secret Lagrange point, where she could transmit the stolen data to the human resistance. But somehow, the Zorak had caught their scent. And now, deep in the no-man's land between stars, there was nowhere to run. "Jax, the asteroid field." Kira pointed to a dense cluster of space rocks drifting to port. "We might be able to lose them in there." Jax hesitated for only a second. Navigating an asteroid field was incredibly dangerous, but so was staying in the open. He banked hard, diving into the tumbling maze of stone. It was like flying through a rock storm. Jax wove the ship through the jagged chunks of asteroid, his reflexes stretched to their limit. Kira, to her credit, didn't scream, though her grip on the seat would likely leave permanent dents. The Zorak ship, far less maneuverable, plowed straight into the field, smashing through smaller rocks with its superior shields. It was still coming, implacable in its pursuit. Jax juked and jinked, pushing the raptor to its limits. He skimmed over the surface of a massive asteroid, so close he could see the pit scars on its surface. The Zorak followed, and paid for it. A jutting spire of rock caught the warship's flank, sending it spinning. Jax swooped in triumph as they burst clear of the field, the Zorak ship now far behind, trailing debris. "Take that, you ugly sons off." His words cut off as a chunk of shattered asteroid slammed into the raptor with terrifying force. Alarms shrieked as the ship tumbled. Controls dead. Jax fought with the yoke, trying to bring the ship back under control. Through the cockpit glass, he could see the swirling vortex of a gas giant looming, its gravitational pull sucking them in. With a grunt of effort, he managed to level out, thrusters sputtering. The raptor limped on, badly damaged. In the co-pilot's seat, Kira was ashen, her golden eyes wide. Jax checked the readouts and his heart sank. Main engines are shot. We got maybe 10 minutes of thrust left, not enough to break orbit. Comms are fried too, we can't transmit the data. Kira closed her eyes, despair etched on her fine-boned face. Then, it was all for nothing. I failed. Jax looked at her, this brave, brilliant woman who had risked everything for a chance at peace. A fierce determination ignited within him. "No," he said firmly, "we haven't failed yet. There's one more thing we can try, one more desperate gamble. If you're willing." Kira opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. In them, he saw the same fire, the same refusal to surrender. Slowly, she nodded. Jax took a deep breath, then reached out and took her hand in his, feeling the coolness of her skin, the slight tremor of her fingers. "Then let's finish this," he said softly. "Together." Because he knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that side by side, they could achieve the impossible. The plans would be delivered. The Overlord would be stopped. And perhaps, just perhaps, in the midst of this war-torn galaxy, something new and beautiful could be born. The raptor shuddered and groaned as Kira pushed it beyond its limits, her slender fingers flying over the controls with a deftness that astonished Jax. He lay strapped into the co-pilot's seat, drifting in and out of consciousness, the right side of his flight suit dark with blood. A jagged piece of metal, torn free during their frantic escape from the gas giant's gravity well, had punctured the cockpit and impaled Jax through the abdomen. Only Kira's quick action, engaging the emergency force fields and sealing the breach, had saved him from the vacuum of space. But now, as they limped towards the hidden Lagrange point, with the Zorak warship still doggedly on their tail, Jax could feel his life ebbing away with each labored breath. The pain had receded to a distant throb, replaced by a growing numbness that terrified him more than any agony. "Kira," he rasped, his voice barely audible over the rattle of the dying ship. "You have to. Leave me. Take the escape pod. Finish the mission." Kira glanced at him, her golden eyes fierce. "No," she said firmly. "I won't abandon you. We're in this together, remember." Jax wanted to argue, but he lacked the strength. His vision was tunneling, darkness creeping in at the edges. Dimly, he was aware of Kira speaking urgently into the comm, of the shimmering veil of the transmission beam as she uploaded the stolen plans. Then, silence. Kira was kneeling over him, her cool hands cradling his face. Tears glistened on her cheeks. "It's done," she whispered. "The data. It's sent. You did it, Jax. You saved us all." Jax tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "We did it," he corrected softly. "I couldn't have. Without you." Kira shook her head, her expression transforming into something resolute, almost fierce. "No," she said softly. "You won't die here. Not after everything. I won't let you." Before Jax could question her, Kira pressed her forehead against his, her cranial ridges smooth and cool against his feverish skin. She began to murmur in her native tongue, the words flowing like music. Jax felt a sudden warmth suffuse his body. emanating from where their skin touched. The pain in his abdomen began to recede, replaced by a tingling, almost electric sensation. His eyes flew open in shock. Kira was glowing, her lavender skin suffused with a pulsing, golden light. As Jax watched in awe, the light seemed to flow from her, down her arms, into him. He could feel it coursing through his veins, knitting bone, mending flesh. "Kira," he breathed. "What are you doing?" She smiled at him, a smile of such tenderness that it made Jax's heart clench. "My people are blessed with a rare gift," she said softly. "The ability to heal, to share our life force with another. But it comes at a great cost." Realization dawned on Jax, cold and terrifying. "No," he croaked, trying to push her away. "Kira, don't. I'm not worth it." But Kira only held him tighter, her gaze unwavering. "You are worth everything," she whispered fiercely. "You showed me that hope still exists, that there is still good in this universe. I would give my life 1,000 times over for that." Jax felt tears sting his eyes. "Kira." But whatever else he might have said was lost as a sudden, blinding radiance filled the cockpit. Kira's chant rose to a crescendo, the golden light pulsing in time with her words. Jax felt a rush of energy, of vitality, surging through him like a bolt of lightning. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, it was over. The light faded, and Kira slumped forward, her strength spent. Jax caught her, cradling her in his arms as he had once before, in what seemed a lifetime ago. But this time, she didn't stir. Her eyes remained closed, her chest still. "Kira." Jax's voice broke on the word. "Kira, please." But there was no response. The Zorak woman who had defied her people, who had risked everything for a chance at peace, lay lifeless in his arms, a faint smile still curving her lips. She had given her life for his. The ultimate sacrifice. Jax bowed his head, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Around him, the Raptor drifted, engines cold, the battle and the mission, and the fate of galaxies forgotten in the face of this smaller, yet infinitely more profound loss. But even as despair threatened to consume him, Jax felt something else kindle in his chest. A flicker of determination, of purpose. Kira's sacrifice would not be in vain. He would make sure of it. Gently, reverently, he laid her body down, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Then, with a deep breath, he turned to the controls. The Raptor's engines coughed, sputtered, then flared to life. Jax pointed the nose towards the distant glimmer of the human fleet, towards home. He carried more than just the plans now. He carried Kira's memory, her legacy, and he would fight for it, for her, until his last breath. Jax stood on the observation deck of the human flagship, staring out at the sea of stars. Behind him, the celebratory din of the crew filled the air. The jubilation of a battle won, a war ended. But Jax felt curiously numb to it all. His hand drifted to his abdomen, to the spot where the shrapnel had pierced him. There was no scar, no pain. Kira had healed him completely, at the cost of her own life. Kira. Even thinking her name sent a lance of grief through his heart. In the short time he'd known her, she had become more important to him than he'd ever thought possible. And now she was gone. Lieutenant Ryder. Jax turned to see Admiral Voss approaching, her face lined with weariness, but her eyes bright with triumph. The Overlord's ship is in ruins, his weapon destroyed. The Zorak fleet is in full retreat. It's over. Jax nodded, trying to summon some sense of victory, of accomplishment. That's good news, Admiral. Voss studied him, her gaze softening. Your Zorak friend, Kira, was it? I'm sorry for your loss. She was a true hero. Jax swallowed hard. She was more than that, he said softly. She was everything. Voss laid a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of comfort, of understanding. Her sacrifice will not be forgotten, nor will yours. You've given us a chance at a new future, Jax. A future of peace. Jax took a deep breath, letting the Admiral's words sink in. A future of peace. Wasn't that what Kira had fought for, died for? There's something else, Voss said, a note of curiosity in her voice. The medics who examined you. They found something unexpected. Jax frowned. Unexpected. Voss nodded. Your cells, your DNA, it's changing. Adapting. They found traces of Zorak genetic material, intertwined with your own. Jax's eyes widened. Kira's final gift, he realized. Not just healing, but a part of herself, living on in him. What does it mean? He asked hoarsely. Voss shook her head. We don't know yet, but whatever it is, it's the key to something new, something extraordinary. Jax turned back to the window, to the infinite expanse of space. Out there, among the stars, a new future awaited. A future shaped by the choices of two beings, human and Zorak, who had dared to dream of something more. A new hope, he murmured, echoing Kira's last words. And as he stared into the vast unknown, he felt a flicker of that hope kindle in his heart. For Kira, for their people, for all the endless possibilities yet to come.